Thank you. Good afternoon. Oh, there we are. It works. Instant feedback. Right, let's see if this works. So just to put me in perspective and really to frame what I'm going to talk to you about in terms of experience. So unlike the gentleman from Hypnos Beds, his definition of an SME was up to $50 million, I presume that's company turnover. The IT turnover only, just the IT department for AstraZeneca is $1.2 billion. The security, my team, the security team at AstraZeneca was $12.5 million. So as I said, just to frame a little bit about where I'm coming from. So when you sort of think, well, why is Paul saying that? Well, that's my background. I co-founded this thing called Jericho Forum. We'll talk about Jericho a little bit later. I did a lot of work on the identity, and I'm also one of the 3 global editors. Who's read Cloud Security Alliance version 2.1 guidelines? That is really scary. You're at a cloud conference, and the Bible on cloud computing is the Cloud Security Alliance, which is a global organization of virtually every cloud vendor and all of the big players in cloud. And you haven't read it. Really, really scary. It's referenced at the end, and I'm sure they're going to provide these electronically. So, first thing to do when you're leaving here, go Google Cloud Security Alliance Guidance, version 2.1 currently, which is the Bible on the subject. It's what to ask for, all the nasty questions you should be asking, what you should be doing, all the various things. It covers currently 13 domains, the new one's going to have 14, because it's going to have security as a service as well in it. We think. Due out in October. I'm a consultant specialising in deperimeterization and identity. So let's talk about some of the drivers, shall we? If you hadn't noticed, everything is now with added cloud. It used to be now with added Sarbanes-Oxley. Remember Sarbanes-Oxley? Yeah? It's now with added cloud. Every vendor has a cloud offering. I'm a professional security person. I'm also therefore a professional cynic. You have to remember that. Cloud ultimately is sold on cost. Cost, 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 and cost. It will save you money. They are coming into your business and telling you it will save you money. It is, however, OPEX, operational expenditure versus capital expenditure. It is total cost of ownership being less, is what they're telling you. Ease of upgrades, although very few cloud services have done an upgrade yet, because they're all new. Speed of implementation, supposedly quicker, and the big one, because guess what, they're coming in and talking to the business, not to the IT. Who's here from IT? They're coming in and talking to the business, not IT, generally, and therefore, what they're selling is, guess what folks, you don't have to bother the guys in IT, we'll do it all for you. In fact, that entire list, when you write it down, is almost the diametric opposite of your internal IT department. Do you think there's a message there? That actually the business is pretty pissed off, to put it frankly, with the IT department. Because they're not perceived, in most organisations, as delivering. And they cost an awful lot of money. So, best lessons are definitely served up by Dilbert. I hope you can read it at the back. Can you read that at the back? Hey, fantastic. Yeah? The reason is that your CFO, your CEO, is reading this stuff in the Financial Times. And then the cloud salesman's coming into him and saying, you know, this cloud stuff's going to save you money. So it's being discussed, and generally the first time that the IT department or the security department knows about it is actually when the deal's been half done, and certainly agreed to at board level. So at AstraZeneca, when I joined AstraZeneca a little over 3 years ago, the first thing I walked into and said, we're doing an outsourcing project using a cloud service for HR. So I sort of said, you mean 66,000 members of staff into the cloud, HR? They said yes. It was a fait accompli. The decision, the mental decision by the CFO and the HR department had been already done. So, what is actually stopping us doing it? Let's look at some of the things that's stopping us. Cost of change. Don't underestimate cost of change. Yeah, it isn't just about implementing it in cloud, it's about actually changing from what you're currently doing to cloud, and potentially, if it doesn't work, back again. The IT department, if the IT department has enough clout, the security department definitely, because there are some big security issues. I would say that, wouldn't I, because I'm a security person. We'll come on to that in a minute. Usability? Yeah, okay, well, we'll talk about usability in a minute. Legal and Data Protection Act, definitely. Where's your data going? Yeah, who here uses Salesforce.com? Okay, report to the courts. Now, where is Salesforce.com data being stored? In the US, thank you very much. Therefore, any personal information, that includes name, email address, is covered by the Data Protection Act. You've all filled in your data protection and got legal agreements to export data to the US? I doubt it. Yeah? So, whole load of legal and data protection act issues going on. Loss of control and accountability, particularly for the IT department and the security department, because we're real control freaks. Yeah? And then there's the fear, uncertainty act. We don't understand this cloud thing, it hasn't been tried and tested yet. You know, there's only just a Gartner quadrant for it. So, you know, it isn't mainstream yet. So fear, uncertainty and doubt. There are two real issues I would argue with you this afternoon of why people are having problems with cloud. One is data, yeah, encryption of data, the privacy of data, transnational issues with data. So the Salesforce.com is a cheap shot, but it's true. And the Personal and Data Protection Acts, because it's not just about UK or European Data Protection Acts, Data Protection Acts in Japan, in Canada, in Australia, yada, yada, yada. And of course they're all different. So whereas we think it's bad and they're all subtly different in Europe, you should try the Japanese one versus the European one. They don't bear any resemblance, but they're both data protection acts. Identity is the other one, lack of cloud consumable identity, and we'll talk again about that in a second. So, back to our friend Dilbert. Yeah, cloud computing is no good because strangers would have access to our data. So where is your data? It's sitting in a data center that you don't own, managed by administrators you don't manage. Co-mingled and co-located all over the place. So let's just think about externalization of data for a second. This is a deperimeterization slide. Deperimeterization is the problem that we've faced since about the turn of the century, which is your data is moving outside your borders, like it or not, and your borders are becoming irrelevant. Yeah? Cloud is just another instantiation of that. Yeah? Personal mobile devices, consumerization as people like to call it, is just another example of that. Yeah? Back in the 90s, the 80s and the 90s, the days of mainframes and early PCs, it was really easy, wasn't it? Everything was inside. We ran our own IT, for those that had it, and everything was maintained in our own data centers, and our data was as well. Then, of course, along came, about the breakdown of the corporate border, data started moving outside. Generally, when we started doing email. So for most corporates, that was about 95. We just didn't realize it. We started shoving our data outside. Then, of course, our data's everywhere. You know, now, well, external collaborations in the near future, well, you know, it's cloud. I'm a security person, that's why I put the brackets up the top. It's going to go to cloud whether you like it or not. Your only real choice is whether it's going to be secure. So, you know, it's going into cloud. And actually the future, if you look at it, it's irrelevant. Internal doesn't matter anymore because what you're architecting for, your design criteria is this, the outside of your borders condition. If it's still inside your border, it's just slightly more secure. But what you've got to architect for and design for is this. So anyone who is selling you network security, read the bottom statement. Network security is irrelevant in tomorrow's world. So Bruce Snar is one of the security gurus of our age. Yeah, security is not a product but a process. Yeah, it's designing the entire system. We're going to look a little bit about that now. So, here are some of the questions you should be asking. How do you manage data in an environment you don't own? Where the encryption needs to happen, the little thing that no one ever tells you. When you talk to your cloud providers and you say, you know, how are you going to secure my data? Well, We encrypt it. Brilliant. When you come to run the process that I'm buying off you on that data, you operate on it encrypted. Oh, no, 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 we have to decrypt it at that point. Ah, so it operates unencrypted in your environment. Yes, it does. Who owns the keys so you can unencrypt that data? Well, we have to, the system has to. You mean you have to? Yes. Ah, so not only are you holding my data, you operate on it in encrypted, and you hold the decryption keys. And that's supposed to make me feel better. So again, it's knowing those nasty questions to ask. Their administrators aren't yours. If you look at ISO 17799 and actually see what it says about administrators in there, it says you should be doing background checks on your administrators, especially financial records checks. Are they going to allow you to do them on their administrators? I doubt it. Yeah, exported data, we talked about exported data. Bring your own device increases the problem. And of course, depending on what type of service you're buying, data is commingled with other customers. So lots of reasons not to do it. And this is the attitude that actually a lot of businesses are taking. Yeah, the cost and the perceived benefits outweigh the risk. It's an interesting risk decision. So what are the solutions? Well, the solutions, again, if you haven't read it, and if you haven't read CSA 2.1, I doubt you've read the Jericho Forum Commandments. There is a set of Jericho Forum Commandments, again, referenced at the end. Data must be secured in transit and at rest, commandment number 11. Pretty straightforward. Just remember it. Homomorphic encryption. This is state-of-the-art stuff, but it's coming. It allows you to have that magic trick of you encrypt it, they can operate on it in its encrypted form. Yeah? It seems like real snake oil and magic, but it does work, but it's only just coming. No one will offer it yet. There are a few people who offer it as an add-on. Data anonymization, if I can say that at this time of day. Local key management in key escrow, we talked a little bit about, and encrypting databases, and encrypting tape backups. The other question to ask people is, where's my backup being stored? Where's your backup being installed because you're the cloud service? And are you encrypting it? And are you encrypting it with the same keys as all your other customers? Or my key? Again, lots of questions you need to ask. So let's very quickly talk about identity. This is the famous, if you haven't seen this, this is the Nobody on the Internet Knows You're a Dog. This is the original cartoon. Unfortunately, it's very true. So here are some of the issues about identity that we've come up with over time. First of all, identity impacts usability. Yeah? How many people only have one username? Surprise, surprise. Yeah. How many people have more than 10 usernames? More than 20? Come on, keep your hands up. More than 30? Keep your hands up. You're lying to me. Come on, each of you in this room, I guarantee you, will have at least 30 or to 50 usernames out there. Yeah? And what do we do? What do users do when they manage more than 3 username and passwords?
Use the same one.
Sorry?
Use the same one.
Either use the same one or they write them down.
Use the password manager and use a different one that you don't need to remember, except for the master.
The master one, okay, the one ring to unlock them all, yes. You obviously haven't been watching Lord of the Rings enough to understand the flaw in that particular argument. Yeah? There's no global identity to leverage. Management of people you don't control is flawed. Because you can't. But of course, 10 years, 15 years ago, it's really easy. You either employed staff or you didn't employ staff. And you gave your staff access and you gave your non-staff no access. Now, of course, businesses employ umpteen different ways. You have staff on short-term contracts, long-term contracts, contractors, you name it. There are different ways of employing people. Federation, if anyone tells you, this is sort of, connecting one Active Directory to another Active Directory, doesn't scale. And neither does single sign-on. And national identity schemes are fundamentally flawed. Each of these are topic in their own right. I'm really just sort of throwing them out to give you some thoughts about what you should be thinking about and the questions you should be asking if you're going to cloud. Are there solutions? Absolutely there are solutions. So when we inherited this project to put HR in, I went off to the HR director and had a little discussion and said, you know these 66,000 people that you're going to put into a cloud solution? And they said yes, and so I said, well, fine. You're going to give them a different username and password. Well, that's what the cloud provider says we have to do. Is that a really good idea? Are you going to seriously piss off our entire workforce? So anyway, we had a word, and they said, well, if we could do it some other way. So we toddled off to Belgium, which is where the outsourcer was for this cloud service, and we said, we really don't want to give them another username and password. They said, oh, we can do SAML. So they said, funny that, we can do SAML. If you haven't discovered SAML, SAML is really, really neat. Security Assertion Markup Language is what it stands for, but everyone calls it SAML. It's an assertion or a claims-based solution that securely asserts that I'm Paul Simmonds when logging on to the HR system. So very simply, I go hr.astrazeneca.com and it goes, hi Paul, welcome back. It's secure, the users love it, and it integrates with AstraZeneca's ID scheme. But it's not offered as standard unless you know to ask the right questions. Identity bridges and clubs. There's a guy from Rolls-Royce at the back. Rolls-Royce are part of a bridge network, which is part of the military, aerospace, whatever. So when they do joint projects, as they do lots of joint projects, they can all use a single identity. And it's strong identity, and it comes with a token, I think, doesn't it? Yeah. It does, there we are. There's a pharmaceutical bridge called SAFE, if you're in pharma, which you can use. There are some interesting identity clubs. They're to solve the problem of the lack of global identity, and they are a short-term solution, but they are viable if you play in one of those industries. Identity is about entities. Strange thing, an entity is a person, a device, its code, its organisations. We talk about rich, risk-based decisions. Now, IT departments talk about risk. Generally, what IT departments, when they talk about risk, mean is the business wants to do something, we'll do a risk assessment and tell them all the things that are wrong with it, and the business will sign off and say, yeah, okay, we accept the risk. Isn't that what really happens? Real risk-based decisions using assertion language is really, really neat. So I went on holiday to Spain this year, and when I was in Spain, because I was still editing CSA version 3, I took my laptop with me, much to my wife's annoyance. And I was sitting there and I wanted to check something out on eBay while I was there, so I went up to the hotel lobby where they had free Wi-Fi and logged in on eBay, and eBay goes, okay, username and password's fine, I'm not going to let you in. Why wouldn't it let me in? Two reasons. One is because it detected I was coming from Spain. So it's looked at the identity, not of me, but of the device I was using, geolocated my IP address and said, hang on a second, we haven't seen Paul come from Spain before. Secondly, it said, actually, you're using a new laptop. I haven't seen this laptop before either. So it combined the fact that, okay, username and password matched, machine and location didn't, and went, you ain't getting in. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to phone you up on one of the two phone numbers you've given me before, choose which, XXX, 600, XXX, whatever my home phone number is. Select which one you like. I went mobile phone number please, because I was in Spain. Rushed back to the room, got my mobile phone. It rang me and said, please type in 4862. So I typed 4862 into the box, back channel authentication. It said, oh, you really are Paul Simmonds. Fine, you can go in and access eBay. Really, really neat. An example of a rich, risk-based decision on a cloud service. Because, of course, who can connect to that cloud service? Because most, a real cloud services are internet-facing. Anyone can. But again, you need to think, as eBay have done, a little outside the box on actually how you're going to implement in this deperimeterized environment. So just back to passwords for a second. In real life, people, this is Jack Nielsen, if you Google him, he's a really interesting guy. Web usability is his specialism. Yeah, really interesting guy. Security is increased by designing for the way humans actually behaved. Here, this is AstraZeneca corporately implemented cloud or external services. These are real. Yeah? So, corporate WebEx, who here uses WebEx? Yeah, absolutely. So AstraZeneca.webex.com. Yeah? My Advantage plan, which is all the benefits and car scheme and everything else, is outsourced to Hewitt. Accelerate HRO is my share plan and my shares, which are outsourced to another company. Amex Travel did our Amex, so we outsourced our travel to them. The HR recruitment went out to a thing called globalsuccessor.com. Trainline for train travel was outsourced to the Trainline. The Swedish account system was totally non-standard. That's another story. And spam was our message lab did our email filtering, so that my spam, if I wanted to look at it, went to the message labs. Guess what? AstraZeneca were pretty good at doing this thing called single sign-on, or actually there's no such thing called single sign-on, it's reduced sign-on at best. Yeah? Every single one of those were different. Yeah? Even to these two, look, even HR can't get it right with my share plan, employee number with a no leading zero, employee ID with a leading zero. Go figure. If you want to confuse the user, so guess what I did? Guess where I got this list from? The text file sitting on my laptop. Yeah? Now, to be fair, the laptop was an encrypted hard drive, so, yeah. But in reality, because most of those I went to once in a blue moon, travel was organised by my PA. I used them occasionally, so I wrote them down. Then, of course, we had all those other external services, the Information Security Forum, Forrester, Open Group, Qualys for our scanning, Avis, and so on. Even the security companies out there, so RSA, who do the RSA conference, which is the big security conference, biggest security conference in the world. Yeah, my login to the RSA conference was my AstraZeneca email address, but the access to the RSA wireless at the conference was keyed on my Open Group email. Aren't standards wonderful? And you wonder why the users are confused. So very quickly, because they want to get you away on time, I'm going to introduce you to this really to say nothing more than go read the paper. This is a really easy read, it's 3 sides of A4. This is a thing called the Jericho Forum Cloud Queue model. It's a bit of work we did about 3-4 years ago now, which says this is how you need to look at cloud services. This is real cloud, up the top. Yeah, it sits out on the internet, deperimeterized. Yeah, it uses open technology, and it's totally outsourced. So it sits up here. This is what you'd call true cloud. Yeah, it's the Amazon Merchant Services, it's the eBays, it's the EC2 service, it's whatever you want to call it. The reason most people are playing in private cloud, which is these 2 boxes down here, this one and this one, is because of the identity and privacy question. We don't dare move into any of these. The real cost savings to be had up here. But the reason we can't move up there is because of data privacy issues or data encryption issues and because of identity issues. So if I sit down here in the internal cloud, perimeterized inside my perimeter, in the open or proprietary stack, doesn't really matter, then I can link to my internal Active Directory and then I can put my hands around the data on those systems and say they're still in our data center. So yeah, there are some savings to be made down here, but the real savings are actually architecting to move up there. So, cloud won't fully take off without appropriate identity and access management. I've basically just said that. Private clouds allow you to use your internal stuff. Collaborative clouds yeah, starting to take off, especially in some of the clubs that are out there using some of this bridge identity stuff. Because they're using the bridge identity, so you're mitigating one of those problems. You need to seriously look at this one. Cloud takeoff. Yeah, we'll move from access by list to access by claims and attributions. Again, look at the Jericho Forum paper on it if you want the background to that, and also the up-and-coming stuff on CSA. So to finish with, very simply, here are sort of your 4 key principles, certainly for next generation identity. First of all, you need to separate identity, and that's identity not over the person, but the device and the code, and the organisation, because it's not just your organisation, from the access management stuff. At the moment, traditional computing lumps the two together. In a cloud environment, you must separate them. Identity isn't just about people, I've just said that. Federation of existing identity and access management, IAM, that's your traditional Active Directory, doesn't scale into the cloud. And strong identity is the key to trust and collaboration. So the better you can do strong identity, the richer risk decisions you can make. Easy to say, harder to do. So, is your business ready to do cloud? Before you get to the point where your CFO comes to you and says, we've just signed this deal to do this big cloud deal, you really should be implementing a robust identity strategy. Assertion and claim should be at the heart of it, said that already. You need to deliver strong identities for all entities. So you've got, how are you going to identify your devices? Well, guess what? Actually, if you're running Active Directory, you get it for free. Most people don't switch it on. So it's actually fairly straightforward to do. People just don't know the right questions to ask. Yeah? So to actually provide identity, PKI-based identity, for free if you're running Active Directory, for every single laptop and PC in your organisation is 1 bit change in Active Directory, but it's not on by default. You need a robust data model. I heard people around the tables earlier talking about data. Data is really important because your data is outside of your organisation now. So unless you have a robust data model, you don't stand a snowball's chance in hell of controlling where your data goes. You can't put rich, risk-based rules based on attributes that says, if they have this attribute, they can have the data, and if they don't, they can't. Because that's the way it's going to work in the future. You need an architecture that embraces deperimeterization. In other words, don't rely on the fact that you've got a border, because you haven't in cloud. And you need a robust governance process so that actually you intercept those salesmen before they actually get to your CFO and they make those decisions. And just remember, it's happening whether you like it or not. It will happen to you if it hasn't done already, so you better start preparing for it now. So I said I'd promise you some related reading. I have given these electronically to the team outside, so I hope they'll let you have them. There are 4 Jericho Forum papers, 3 on this page. So there's the identity commandments, the original commandments on deperimeterization, and the white paper on the business rationale, so you can see some of the background to this. These are all very short reads. They're aimed at 2 to 3 sides of A4, so they're not hard reading. They're aimed at senior level executives. Freely available, jerichoforum.org. Here's the Jericho Forum Cloud Cube model, so you can see how that all fits together. And finally, if you haven't read it, 2.1 out now, version 3 out in October. And with that, if you've got time, a question or 2. Stunned into silence at the end of the day. Yes, certainly. Go.
Is there a cloud identity provider you would trust that you would recommend?
A public cloud identity provider? No.
Private one?
The private bridge clubs. The only players in the space at the moment. There are lots of public ones if what you want is self-asserted identity, but it's not strong identity. So, UK government currently talking to Facebook. Come on. Anyone from the UK government here? Ah, well, get your act together. Because it's a joke.
We're going to integrate it with Salesforce.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, and then Twitter, and then you'll be laughing. Yes, certainly.
Just a question around, I've mentioned a couple of times the idea of actually putting a kind of your identity into the internet securely, and that's used as the reference point whereby you get validated for anything that you want to use. I think the idea of actually health being an issue.
Yeah.
So that the doctor can see this information.
Absolutely. Yeah. So.
But then once you've got that established, you could
They can use it all over the place.
Yeah.
Total joke. And I'll tell you why. The American government have got an initiative. We won't slag off the British government anymore because we kicked out the identity scheme in Britain, thankfully. The American government currently are implementing a thing called NSTIC, I'll get this right, it's an Americanism, National Strategy for Trusted Identity in Cyberspace. Yeah? I put in the Jericho Forum response to NSTIC, and I wrote the international part of the Kantara, which is Liberty Alliance, response to NSTIC. Basically, the issue is this. If you have one place to go for your trusted identity, so let's just let's play the thought game on this. We're going to put 600 million Americans into one big identity database. What do you think is the biggest target for the hackers going to be in this world? If you're going to store in there, the argument goes, you store in there your identity and include everything you could possibly ever want to serve out to someone else. I'm going to serve this little portion of my identity here, this little portion of my identity here. But this master database has me. 10 fingers, 2 eyeballs, inside leg measurement, mother's maiden name, wife, child, social security numbers, everything. When the bad guys, it's not a question of if, when the bad guys get that, it is game over. Because most of those biometrics about you can't be replaced. It is the fundamental flaw. It was the fundamental flaw in the UK identity scheme. It is the fundamental flaw in NSTIC. There are ways to do it, which is to do with root identities. If you want to know more, talk to me offline or go and read the Jericho Forum paper on identity command. So what Jericho did, seeing all this craziness go on, Jericho Forum is a group of Chief Information Security Officers for some of the Global 500. So Rolls-Royce, Boeing, a whole bunch of, some real big heavyweight players. AstraZeneca, ICI, banks. Jericho looked at this and said, actually what we're going to do is we did the principles for deprotorization, we're going to do the principles for identity. And actually say, not this is what you should do, but these are the principles by which you design a system, and therefore actually the principles by which you shouldn't design a system. They're quite a good read, they're only 3 sides of A4. And as I said, further discussions can be had offline. Go.
Facebook was just mentioned now. There's been a lot of press about Google Plus asserting the use of real name. Do you think that is fundamentally flawed because it's for the same reasons?
So if you're a woman, I take the cheap shot and say, what happened when you got married?
Exactly.
What happened when you get divorced? What happens when you change your name by default? Actually, people operate with personas. It's how people operate. It goes back to Jacob Nielsen's quote about design for the way people operate. Real names, a single real name. Yeah? A name is just an attribute of your identity. It is not an identity in itself, and again, it's one of those fundamental flaws people make when designing systems. So it's really important that identity is separated from attribute. Understand what's actually identity and what's an attribute. Yeah? I'm a person. I have a number of personas I operate with. Yeah? You're seeing today my security professional persona. Yeah, in about 2 hours' time, you'll be seeing, you won't be seeing because I won't be sharing it with you, but another bunch of people will be seeing my kayak instructor persona. Yeah, and I might have 2 different names in that. I've got a friend of mine who I knew for 20 years, and for the first 15 years I knew him. I knew him as Frank Cannon. Yeah, I actually learned about 5 years ago that he's named David Cannon, and he's actually a detective chief inspector in the Met Police. Yeah, but I knew in canoeing scouting circles he's known as Frank. Why? No idea. And I don't care. Yeah, but he operates with 2 different names for his 2 different personas. Through, in his case, an act of history. Yeah? So, real names are, again, flawed thinking. Go.
The argument against it, and the argument why people like Amazon are using it, is to stop the trolling that's happening on certain sites. I mean, Apple is a prime example. Everything that happens on Apple, the rating, the ranking, and everything is just abused because people are hiding. When Amazon, you can't actually write anything unless you use the name written on your credit card.
So go back to first principles about what the actual flaw is. The flaw is there is no good source of identity about you being you. And therefore what you're doing is resorting to other methods like real names. So let's fix the thing at first principles, which is to have identity. So the work that we did on identity, the acid test of identity is, can you have, now I'm going to get this right, pseudo-serial anonymity. And by that I mean is, can I have an electronic identity by which I can go and vote, but only vote once, which is pseudo-serial anonymous identity. That is the acid test for any identity system.
But if I take that as an example of something in the past, the reason that telecommunication companies had to get back to a single numbering system around the world was that people wanted to communicate. In other words, the consumer drove the industry to the point that it has to happen. In the mobile industry, PayPal is driving the mobile e-commerce because people are fed up of doing it any other way. It's a simple and easy method of doing it. Your argument about these systems being too big and too hard, at the end of the day, the consumer will force the hand of the technology to make it.
Absolutely, but the reason that PayPal works is because if I want to send you money, I don't need to give you, as I currently do if I use a credit card, my credit card number, my 3-digit CVV on the back, my mother's maiden name and everything else. I just give you my email address. Yeah? So it goes round to that exposure issue. If identity is going to be kept truly private, yeah, I do not want all my stuff in a big database. I just want I can give you my email address because, hey, that's pretty public, and you can send me money. Do that now if you like. But it works really well. Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm being given the... No? No? Okay. One more question, if there is one more question out there. Go for it.
Sorry, we're about to introduce Microsoft Forefront Identity Manager within the internal network. And I'm just wondering whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing from a security point of view in terms of how it contributes.
The answer is, it's fine as far as it goes, just remember it's a parameterized system. Don't expect it to extend properly into cloud. Theoretically, with Microsoft, you can get the add-ons to do SAML. It's a little kludgy. Look very careful at it. I would look at something alternative like Korean or Ping Identity as your extension into the cloud from Active Directory. Don't use the Microsoft stuff. Ping works. I'm told, I have personal experience that Ping works. I have second-hand experience that Korean works. And with that, thank you very much.